Hey Twitter, what's up? So this one is fears agents have. It was a little too layered for me to just do off the cuff. And by the way, I was the kid in school who was terrified to read in front of people and stuttered a lot, so cut me a break. Here we go. First of all, an overview. It feels like there's plenty of writers that see agents as the Ari Gold archetype from Entourage. However, I would say he's elevated, heightened and fluffed up for TV. There's some truth to it, but he's not a 100% accurate portrayal. What's the flip side of that? Anybody know? Remember Jay Maloney? Superstar agent rising through the ranks, poised to be one of the biggest hotshot agents ever in Hollywood, killing it. And then what happens? He fucking hangs himself, dead. There's a dark side to all of this as well, although I'm going to save most of that for the book I'm going to do at some point. Okay, fears agents have. Let's get into it. Explaining some of the agent's psyche and what agents go through. Number one, fear. And by the way, there's like 11. Number one, fear. Fear of making agent in the first place. And what does that look like? It's not like they tell you, hey, you've been doing such a great job. You're definitely going to make agent. Nobody knows if they're going to make agent. The reality is the partners say, here's a time, let's say Thursday at 3:30 p.m. And then what do? You call your spouse and say, hey, they gave me my time. I'm fucking terrified. I don't know if I made it. And then on that day, you go into the office and you're watching other trainees leave the room, head hung low, some of them in tears. And you're like, fuck, they didn't make it. These are my friends and they didn't fucking make it. But I hope I do. Then you call your spouse and say, 10 minutes before the meeting and say, people aren't making it. I'm fucking scared. And then the partners call you in. And from there, it's blunt and to the point. It's like, hey, you've been with us for several years and you didn't make it. So sorry. And good luck out there. Next. Or, hey, you've been with us for several years. Congrats, you made it. No fucking parade for you. Now get back to work. It's blunt. There's no hand holding. Number two, fear. Fear of the partners, department heads, and agents above you that you're still servicing while building your own client base, aka your brand. Understand that there's a hierarchy. Number one, partners. Number two, department heads. Number three, mid-level agents. Then the brand new baby agents at the bottom. Sometimes feels like new writers, feel like there's an agency and there's just a bunch of agents in there and they're all at the same level. That's not true. Understand that in the beginning, the baby agent is barely making any money. I remember back in the day, for example, once my ex made agent, we were still eating ramen for years after that. It's not like you become an agent and suddenly you're rich. That doesn't happen. They don't just hand you $1 million check for no reason. I would also say that you can be a baby agent. However, there can be an assistant getting a bigger bonus than you that year because they're working for a bigger agent who's cool as shit and breaks them off. I've seen assistants get like checks for like 10 grand or something. You're not going to make that as a first year agent. Moving on. Number three, fear of not fitting in at the agency, not fitting agency branding, which is hell of important. And so what is that? For a guy, it's the $2,000 perfectly fitted suit, hair perfectly combed, For a woman, it's the power look, probably all black, and if we're being honest, a touch sexy. That's kind of the directive in real life. And don't get mad at me. I didn't invent that for the women. If you want it to change, go tell them. And the higher you go, then it becomes about having the right car, the right house in the right neighborhood, the right friends, attending the right events and parties, the right schools for your kids, and all of that kind of stuff. In my opinion, big agencies are a bit of a cult. This is something I realized after leaving the agency world, as a spouse. Would I go back to it? Fuck no. It's weird and creepy to me. But we had paraphernalia, branded t-shirts, hats, sweatshirts, Swiss Army knife, clocks, etc. Not that they were all sitting around the house displayed, just you were constantly seeing the branding. And truthfully, at that level, they look at other agencies as garbage. I mean, let's keep it real. Looking at a WME as lower level, I promise you. And by the way, that's one difference with managers. Managers don't have to have that look. Generally, they keep it more casual versus the power look. Number 4, fear. Bonuses, huge one. Fear of not getting a good bonus. Agents don't know what their year-end bonus is going to be. So they're worried about that all year long. And that's probably the number one reason agents sell out their clients. Agents are trying to appease the agency bottom line and look good to department heads and the partners because that's how it's done. And before you go in for your bonus meeting, everybody's getting a little scared around November-ish and trying to figure out when are the bonuses going to drop. On that day, you have no idea what your number is going to be, and you're already counting on it like Clark Griswold, where everybody's like, God, I hope it's good. But it might not be. And at a certain point, those bonuses start to get into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And if something goes wrong, if the partners don't think you had a good year, it could cost you $100,000. You were thinking you were going to get 200 or 300 or whatever it is, but you only get like 150 or whatever. That's going to sting. So agents are afraid of that, and rightly so. It's a scary time of year for agents. And I should say this too. In the beginning, my ex and I, we tried to calculate when that good money would start coming in. We talked about the long game. And guess what? It was like 8 to 10 years out. So understand that the agents play the long game too. And we talk about that as writers and having to do that. Just understand they do that too. Number 5, fear. The studio passing on clients. Agents here know more than anyone else in the industry. And it sucks for them because they're certain at that point that it could sell, but they just don't know if it will sell. Thus, they'll never tell you, if you ask, do you think this is going to sell and for how much? They're never going to answer that. But they're not going to take on a project unless they're certain that it could sell. But they already know that it might not, and it probably won't. So the fear comes in when they really believe in a project, when they really believe a project is going to sell for a lot of money and be a benchmark, touchstone deal for them, which kind of like makes their career, and it doesn't fucking work. Which is why they will never tell a client what they really think. They won't do it. Moving on. Number six fear. Finding the next big hit, the next big thing. There's no guarantee that they're going to find that. Maybe they will. Hopefully they will. But there's no guarantee. They might be one and done. And speaking of that, the 7-figure club, there's no guarantee that a rep is ever going to sell anything for 7 figures. It might happen, but it might not. Not every rep has sold stuff for 7 figures. I would add to that, a lot of agents have this is kind of a defense of us writers, have the best material in the world handed to them on a silver platter. I get that. They are super spoiled in that way. That's why it's hard to get them to get to them, first of all, and then have them like or love something. And I think they get used to that, I really do. And they get spoiled and they forget it's the best material in the world. Moving on. Number 7 fear, not getting invited to exclusive parties. That sounds arrogant and egotistical, and it is, but there's another component to it called swag. Example, makes me think of my ex getting invited to the Day of Pampering, which is an exclusive event for women. Essentially, it's, female celebs and A-listers. You go there and they give you $40,000 worth of swag. I shit you not. You go brunch, you get pampered all day, get your nails done, did custom-made jeans, custom-made shoes, and, possibly try to poach some clients while you're there. Then you split with giant suitcases full of makeup where one little tiny product like that big costs, $800. Also, you're going to have in there plane tickets, massages, vouchers for all kinds of shit, $2,500 hotel rooms, all kinds of crap. So if you fall off of that list, there's $40,000 gone from your yearly expenses. And so once you get to that level, it's scary. You have to try to maintain it by inking super high profile deals or you're going to get cut from that list. Again, once you get there, you kind of want to stay there because it's worth a lot of money, but it's really, really hard to do. Moving on. Number 8, fear of clients leaving and or getting poached externally or internally. We know what the external part is, correct? I hope so. Do we know what the internal poaching is? Example, my ex had a client making $100,000 a week. $100,000 a week, not a typo. And I said, hey, I think this other agent is trying to angle for the lead position on this client. I'd watch your back. I don't trust him. Did she listen? No, she didn't. So what ultimately happened? So he moved into the lead position and now that writer is his client. So poaching can happen internally. And if I was an agent, I would be very cognizant of this and make sure I'm servicing my clients. Number 9, fear of expenses getting shut down. I used to eat on the agency's dime like 4 times a month. That's around, $500 a month times 12 months, $6,000. Was widely known that agents were doing this. Expenses have gotten shut down more since then, but they also used to let you keep your credit card miles, and we'd go to Hawaii every year for like 11 days, stay at the Royal Hawaiian, $700 a night for free. So there's that stuff. What does that add up to? Let's say you add up that with what you lose in swag if you get kicked off the list. And let's say you get a shitty bonus that year. That could be $150,000 less that year or more. So that stuff is scary. And most of this stuff is about money. That's what agents are most concerned with. Fear of losing money. Excuse me. Number 10, fear, the big one, fear of getting fired. And if you're an agent and you're not constantly in fear of being fired, you're probably not paying attention, because when it happens, usually the hatchet just drops. They bring you in and say, hey, listen, this isn't working out, you're gone. And whatever the trades say, left to pursue other shit, not true, fake news. Number 11, fear. Fear of bad PR. Example, there was an agent doing some shady shit, and I said, hey, listen, you need to stop doing that shit, dude. If this makes the trades, your whole career is done. You're kicked out of Hollywood. And the agent was like, you're right. I'm going to go get some help. And went to a therapist. That's some of the more on the dark side, which I'm kind of saving. So this, just last thought. My opinion, agents aren't gatekeepers. Not really. The studio is the gatekeeper. Agents can't force the studio to buy stuff. I think some agents feel like they're the gatekeeper to some degree, which is kind of true-ish, But I think if you pin them down on it, they'd admit that they're only a seller and that the only true gatekeeper is the buyer. So that's kind of it. I would say most agents probably don't think they operate from a standpoint of fear, but I think if they're dead honest with themselves, I think they'd agree that they are. So that's kind of it. Later.